audience. Please turn off your cell phone or turn it to the background. When the debate is still in progress, please do not share or use flash recording features. Thank you. First amendment on public speech, 4 minutes.
Honorable judges, fellow debaters, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I am the first speaker for the affirmative side, and my partners will be the second and third. We affirm that the Taiwan government should make public sex offenders' personal information. To start off, the affirmative team's definitions of terms in this topic are as follows. Taiwan government as all branches and specific organs mentioned in the case below of the government of the ROC. Public as to open to all ROC citizens to access. Sex offenders as perpetrators of crimes detailed under the ROC Criminal Code, Part 2, Chapter 16. Personal information as information gathered under the Sex Offenders Information Management Methods, Article 2, Sexual Assault Offender Registration and Inspection Methods Decree, Article 4, Sexual Assault Crime Prevention Act, Act 9, and the nature of crime and sorted by degree of offense. For the debate, I will be discussing the proposed plan and the first contention, the importance of the rights of innocence, while my second and third speaker will continue my team's case by espousing the other significant harms. Moving on to our plan. Mandate. Revise the MOHW methods and allow public access through internet, a website devoted to listing info and police records, raising awareness done mainly through newspaper headlines. Agency, as the Ministry of Health and Welfare and the Department of Protective Services, enforcement through the Ministry of Justice and MPA. Funding. The cost of obtaining info is already covered because the government has already done measures to do this. They have just not released it. Money is taken from taxes. And workability. Motto, United States of America, Megan's Law, requires law enforcement authorities to make public the information of registered sex offenders. And the Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Sexually Violent Offender Registration Act, the United States law that requires states to implement a sex offender and crimes against children registry. Contention 1. The right of the at-risk should not be jeopardized for the rights of those who have already invaded the rights of innocence. When we allow sex offenders to revel in the safety of anonymity, while the general population lives in perpetual ignorance and fear, there is something seriously wrong with the system. Unfortunately, that is the current one we are stuck with in Taiwan. Releasing the personal information of sex offenders in a publicly accessible domain and raising awareness about it will provide the citizens of Taiwan to have at least a basic security, knowing where the potentially recidivist offenders dwell. This argument will be expanded upon by the second speaker in his speech. Although one may argue that the rate of recidivism among rapists is comparatively low, it cannot be denied that it exists. Are we supposed to wait for numbers to rise before taking action? Can we as human beings do that with a conscience? The affirmative side firmly believes that if there is any way that measures can be taken to prevent a rape, which is not only a violation of body, but also a severe, irreversible blow to mind and soul, then it should be taken. Is it just that a violent and previously convicted criminal may receive a right to security, but the rest of the population cannot? Never. Citizens of Taiwan are left vulnerable, not knowing if they are in close proximity of a dangerous individual. Sex offenders can roam free with the reassurance that they are free from public scrutiny, but the majority, the innocent, must suffer and sacrifice their rights. In addition, we must keep in mind that these sex offenders have already committed an illegal act, and most times it is monstrous and despicable. During the course of the offense, the individual has already taken the rights of innocent. As a nation, we should come together to ensure that measures be taken to protect the rights and well-being of that risk. When denying support to such a cause with arguments such as the cost effectiveness, the opposition is essentially placing the value of money over the value of the welfare of a human being. The affirmative adamantly believes that the right of at-risk, which is all citizens of Taiwan, should never be sacrificed for the right of individuals who have in varying degrees of brutality harmed an innocent and taken his or her rights. Thank you. I now stand ready for processing.
Second negative cross-examine first affirmative, 2 minutes.
So how are you guys supposed to solve the problem with this problem?
Well, the most important point of the affirmative speech is to prevent rape.
Prevent rape, but we have belong to towards the sex offender.
That is another part of the problem. The problem we should be focusing on is to prevent future rapes.
Okay, so what about treatment? How are you sure that treatment doesn't work for sex offenders? If you have certified treatment and treatment does work, then we do not need to treat sex offenders.
However, judging by recidivism rates that are still occurring, it is obvious that treatment is not working.
So can you talk more about the recidivism rate, like how much is it? What percent?
It's around 2.7%, and although, as I mentioned in the speech, that it is slightly low, however, we must not deny that it exists. Because it exists, there are still people out there being raped, and this problem still has to be dealt with.
Thank you. So, and in your speech, you mentioned that we should put this to newspaper headlines and like raise the attention of people, like raise the attention of citizens.
Yes, the advertisements will tell people about how we will have a website devoted to revealing the personal information.
Thank you. So, don't you think that this is too much of an effort to be put into to solve the 2.7% problem?
Are you saying that the 2.7% of people who are raped should
I'm
not
not saying
have
that they
this
don't
chance?
have a chance. They do not have a chance. I think that there are other ways to solve 2.7%. That you do not need to put so much effort into this.
However, this is a very serious problem, and we, as affirmative, believe that it is important that citizens of Taiwan should have a chance to access information to inform themselves of danger in society.
I have another question. How do you plan to categorize the sex offenders? Are you saying that they are all equal? Are you saying that they have all offended equally? Are you saying that they have all broken the law the same way?
No, there are different ways to rate it. For example,
First, negative practice 4 minutes.
Though the first affirmative stated some well-thought ideas, she also stated herself that Taiwan is a relatively safe place, so this plan will eventually turn out to be a waste of time. She also stated that raising awareness through newspaper headlines, but with our current generation, with the whole of the internet and social media, hardly anyone even looks at newspapers anymore, so therefore it will be hardly of any use. Me, as the first negative, I define the term sex offender as all persons convicted of crimes involving sex, including rape, molestation, sexual harassment, pornography production, or distribution. The status quo remains that the information regarding sex offenders should be released to the general public. We hereby argue that releasing the information is unnecessary and has been worsening the problem as it is. Since 2005, the number of reported sex assaults has been increasing by 14.6% each year, according to the Ministry of Justice. And even though the legislative department adopted the Megan's Law in 2011, releasing specified information of sex offenders, the number of reported sex assaults still topped the previous year by 2,000 cases. First of all, the term sex offenders can be misleading and misinterpreted. A sex offender can be an individual who indiscriminately accosted and raped dozens of strangers, or he may be a 35-year-old man who is married and has 4 children, and he had intercourse with a willing 15-year-old when he was 18 years old. How are we supposed to determine the difference when the fear of the general public overrides the rationality that sex offense and evil are not equivalents? This not only leads to fear, but also vigilantism, which leads to my second point, human rights of sex offenders. From 2006 to 2013, 3,900 sex offenders have been released, and only 3.7% of them recommitted crime and were sent back to prison. And since 60% of sex assault victims are related or close to the sex offender, and 26% being teenagers, releasing the information to the public seems unnecessary. In addition, in 2005, Southern Taiwan has a case which a teacher molested numerous students, and the school president and a local police officer knew about it. But in fear of losing face and causing shame, they did nothing. The releasing of information is not helpful in that regard. Sex offenders face difficulty in housing, employment, and excessive community fear on them, which leads to the recommitting of crime. If we believe in our prison system and its ability to rebuild its inmates, why should we sabotage the opportunity for them to come back to society? It would be a question if the vast majority of offenders recommit crime, but that's not the case. For teenagers committed of statutory rape, people arrested for public urination or harassment, should there be a record that prevents them from ever living a normal life just because of a minor behavioral misconduct or ignorance? Thank you.
Affirmative cross-examine first. Negative 2 minutes.
Okay, so in your speech you mentioned briefly that having housing and unemployment and employment difficulties will lead to a recommitting of crime. Have you said that? Did you say that having housing and employment difficulties will lead to recommitting of crime?
I did not say that.
Okay, so did you not notice that we will categorize the level of severity of rape?
I did not say that.
Sections. I did. So this will cross out the minor behavior that you have taught. However, you also mentioned an example about how the rape was done to a statutory rape to a willing 15-year-old. However, will you not agree that 15-year-olds, as their minds have not completely developed yet, they are not unable to give informed consent? And that is why there is such a thing as statutory rape.
They're their own person, they make their own decisions, and it is their mistakes, and it hardly ever happens.
But you did mention that 26% are teenagers.
Yes. Not in Taiwan though, we're talking about the whole world.
Okay. And then, so you also mentioned that the Megan's Law still tops previous years. And do you have evidence for that?
You really want me to look for it?
Okay, well then,
Second affirmative, control the speech 4 minutes. Second affirmative, control the speech 4 minutes.
Honorable judges, fellow debaters, and esteemed guests, I am the second affirmative, and I will begin the speech by rebutting the opposition's points. First of all, the opposition brought up that our plan would not work because nobody reads newspapers. However, I would like to bring up that our first affirmative did bring up that we would be advertising through methods except for newspapers. There's also TVs, there's also magazines, there's also radio shows, and newspapers are only one part of our advertising section. And we believe that through advertising, we can advocate the amount of the people who rape people, and thus preventing them from wanting to rape. Okay, also we have, as our first affirmative has brought up, we will be splitting the differences between different sex offenders. In fact, the Taiwanese government has already done this, and there is already a separation between the minors who rape and adults who rape. And if you look at the Taiwan Constitution, there's already a clear set of data between different categories of rape, first degree rape, and etc. So moving on to contention. Our second contention is that raising awareness increases the protective measures that may be taken. So we already have the data compiled about our the people raped. We already have their information. We have their data. So the thing is, if we don't publicize them, what is the purpose of taking this data? It does the government no good, merely allowing us to do annual checks of them. However, if we do publicize the data, we allow people to take precautionary measures. We allow them to create securities. We allow them to reconsider decisions. We allow them to enhance their own security to prevent rape from occurring. They know who to suspect. They know who to avoid. They know where to avoid. And thus, this will help decrease recidivism rates. And although the recidivism rates are indeed low, we do not want these numbers to increase. And although it is a measure of 2.7%, we have to consider that there are over 150,000 rape cases. And 2.7% of this is still a substantial amount that we cannot allow to continue into the future. Third contention, rape causes long emotional pain and psychological trauma. According to a report by Verghese, Professor Verghese, rape causes a trauma similar to PTSD. And this is something that causes us, people who are raped, to be unable to continue working. They have psychological stress, and they're forced into hospitals where they have to stay there. And now this creates two problems. One, economical, and two, social. First of all, economical. The amount of money it costs to treat these treatments is substantially high, and it is a cost that must be considered when we consider recidivism rates. In order to treat them, we have to spend a substantial amount of money. Also, while these patients are out of the work market, they're unable to work, thus harming our economy itself. Thus, there are two economic harms. One, they are unable to work, and two, they have to do extra treatment. Second of all, socially speaking, these people are traumatized for life, and thus it creates a fear among the Taiwanese society, a fear that all people may have. It will be a fear of rape, a fear of going out, a fear of what happens if I wander around the street alone. Will I be attacked by this random stranger? No, we cannot allow this to happen. We cannot allow this fear to spread throughout Taiwan. Thus, to protect the people of Taiwan, we believe that we must advertise, we must help these people, we must create a clear system to protect our people. If we cannot protect our people, then what is the point of a government? The point of a government is to protect our nation, protect our cities. If a government cannot even do such a simple thing, then they have no right to be called the Taiwanese government. Thank you. I now stand ready for class.
Please return the parents' call. Course negative for examiner, second affirmative, 2 minutes.
Do you realize that your definition of raising awareness will only cause citizens unnecessary fear?
Could you? Actually, no, it's not the case. Rather, by raising awareness, it will allow them to understand where they are, and thus it will allow them to feel more secure about themselves.
I'm
It is
pretty
a
sure
safety
the
measure.
majority of people know about sex offenders, and the fact that Taiwan is relatively safe, do you realize that this will just cause fear?
No, we do not believe that. Rather, it will allow them to reinforce fear. As you said, it's safe, so they know the safety measures. And therefore, by giving them the information, we're not inducing fear, but we're rather giving them a chance to protect themselves, providing them information
Protect themselves from what?
from sex offenders.
Can you prove that? How can you prove that with their plan it can decrease recidivism rates?
For example, last year the Taiwanese government already began a change. Let me find it. They already
It's
changed.
in place now. But it's still applied, so it's not in place, right?
No, they changed by a small degree about how sex offenders are dealt with, decreasing a sex offender rate from 25.65% to 10.35%.
How are you going to deal with the 10.5%?
As a sum, that is already a 15% decrease, and we believe by further allowing this information to spread, we can even push this rate even farther down.
So do you believe that it is possible to completely just like eliminate all sex offenders in the world?
Now that is an extreme case. However, we believe that any substantial decrease by we're talking about 50% here, any further percent decrease will be a substantially less amount of sex offenders. And we
So
cannot,
you're going to go through all that effort just to decrease that little bit left.
we believe in the security of the Taiwanese people. If we cannot, as I mentioned, if we cannot even
It is
protect the
already
Taiwanese people,
relatively safe.
if we decrease it even further, then we can provide an even safer environment for them.
Thank you.
Saying negative from body speech, 4 minutes.
Good morning, honorable judges, worthy opponents, and most esteemed guests. The sex offenders registry should not be released, as simple as that. My partner has already given details and examples on why it should not be released, so I won't bore you with the details. On the other hand, I would like to point out a couple of flaws that we have found in their plan. First of all, our opponents in the affirmative team are saying that we should raise attention to newspaper and website and TV. However, they have neglected the fact that if newspaper headlines are always the same thing, who would want to read the newspaper anymore? If the website commercials are always the same thing, who would want to watch those commercials? And also, they stated that not releasing the sex offender registry will cause problems. Taiwanese citizens will be afraid to walk onto the streets. They will be afraid to go to public centers. They will be afraid to go out. However, they haven't realized the fact that releasing it will only let them know where sex offenders are. They will still stay away from those places. They will still not be able to go out. They'll still be afraid. They'll still be afraid to get raped. They might even move, and this will cause a lot of mayhem. Second of all, they keep on saying that they did indeed categorize the sex offenders in the sex offender registry. However, they did not specify how it should be categorized. They did not say like what degree it should be in, how dangerous they are. Also, they failed to recognize the fact that vigilantism is still a major problem. they stated that vigilantism is not a problem that we should be solving right now. However, by releasing the sex offender registry, vigilantism will increase. So this is a problem that so this is indeed a problem that we should solve. So are they saying that they only want to release the sex offender registry, and cause vigilantism, but they do not want to solve it? They do not want to solve their own problem. So their plan is not that well structured. They do not believe that we should solve further problems. They do not believe that we should have loose ends. They believe that we should have people go around killing other sex offenders, and they are not trying to stop that. Also, a 2.7% is relatively low, as they stated themselves. However, they are putting so much effort to lower 2.7%. We must understand that nothing is perfect. 2.7% is relatively really low. It is one of the lowest ones. It is one of the lowest in Asia. It is one of the lowest in Asia. It is one of the lowest in the whole world. How are we trying? Why do we need to put so much effort into lowering a 2.7% thing? So therefore, judges, please do not go further from this because their plan is flawed and is not well structured. Thank you.
Second affirmative, 47, second negative, 2 minutes.
Does the opposition believe that the minority matters? In that case, why is it that you do not care about this 2.7%?
We are not saying we do not care. We are saying that we do not need to put so much effort. We have better ways, less cost, and more effective.
In that case, what would the negative suggest?
I'm sorry, I do not believe that the negative is here to
Therefore, the negative does not have a better plan than the affirmative, so therefore it is that the affirmative
I believe that
agrees.
it is not our job to do so. But if you want, I can tell you, we have treatment right now which is working. It has lowered recidivism rate, and also we have tracking rates. In 2006, county government has indeed.
Is there any guarantee that it will work? For what reasons will this be more effective than our plan?
So you are saying our plan is not guaranteed to work.
Our plan has already been working, as I
so
stated
it's already
before.
working, so it's the status quo. So I'm saying you're doing the status quo, and you do not want to.
We are simply building on the plan, rather.
So you are not challenging the status quo. So
we are building on the plan, so it is still a change.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. You mentioned that people will be afraid to go to public centers.
You mentioned that.
Yes. However, you do acknowledge the fact that by releasing public information, usually these rapists do not lurk around these public centers, and rather another area.
So logically speaking, if you were a rapist and you were going to rape someone, you would not go to a public place. You would go to somewhere where no one was living, and you would rape someone.
This is indeed the fact. This is indeed the truth. That most rapes occur in small areas where people
They first go to public places and abduct child, and then they go to private places. They don't rape people in private places. You have any proof that they don't?
And also, how to categorize? Do you realize that? Thank you.
5 minutes preparation. affirmative rebuttal speech, 3 minutes.
Honorable judges, esteemed opponents, the affirmative team is fighting for the release of the sex offender registry to the public. They believe that such an action will make society safer and free from the menace of sexual predators. However, they have failed to show the inherent danger that comes from such an action, such as vigilantism, and targeting individuals whose sex offenses were minor and not violent. Ladies and gentlemen, what they are trying to present to you is a fallacy. They say that this will create a sense of security. However, this is a false sense of security, as most new crimes are committed by someone not on the registry, as 80% of the child molesting were committed by close relatives. So the parents are going to keep an eagle eye on the registry, while probably their uncle are trying to molest their child. So, move on. First, they have failed to provide a model that is applicable to Taiwan. Most of their models are dealing with sex offenders from other countries. The Megan laws are from other countries, which due to cultural and geological differences makes their cases not practical in Taiwan. The negative side believe that our topic should be focused in Taiwan, yet their model failed to consider in that aspect. Also, they say that their registry is going to categorize the criminals by how dangerous they are. However, a registry that included all offenders or that classifies all or almost all offenders as the most dangerous makes it useless. The public can figure out who is dangerous or who isn't, and they will just going to be fear and revolves it all. Secondly, the affirmative team had not yet stated the existence of any specialized unit, which would be placed in charge of the sex offender list. Their plan did not cover the special training or police or specialized facilities to deal with sex offender lists. Can you imagine how much cost it is going to take? Is Taiwanese government ready, or do we need to expand its police forces? Are we going to put this huge responsibility of solvency on those people who are not ready yet? Furthermore, is the policy suitable for our society? We, the negative, believe that releasing this registry will cause crucial damage to our community. For instances, my teammate provided us evidence of vigilantism by public to sex offenders that have been evaluated as likely to not reoffend. With the stated reasons above, releasing this registry is clearly an inappropriate idea. Therefore, we, the negative team, is firm that the government should take another approaches in solving the issues of sex offenders instead of releasing a sex offender registry. Thank you.
Affirmative rebuttal speech, 3 minutes.
Honorable adjudicators, fellow debaters, ladies and gentlemen, there are 28 people in this room right now. Now, if you take 2.7%, which the negative considers a marginal percentage, and multiply that by the 15,000 cases in 2012, 2 years ago, you get about 400 people, which is about 13 times of this room. Imagine if 13 times of this room was offended by a sex offender. Now, the negative has placed a very heavy emphasis on Taiwan being a relatively safe country and the disproportionate amount of effort that will result from implementing our plan on only addressing a marginal percentage of 2.7%. But if you consider that 400 people that are victims of sex offense cases, then how is that number marginal? They consider the rate, the percentage, but the actual number of people being the victims of these crimes is actually a substantial amount. So they're kind of lost in the picture of things. And another example of that, the negative rebuttal has said that the plan should be focusing on Taiwan, but previously in their cross-examination, they have widened the scope and they said the 60% of recidivism rate of perpetrators of sex offense being family members was talking about the entire world. So they're kind of lost in the scope of what we're talking about. And the affirmative has very clearly placed an emphasis on the disincentive of to sex offenders of the plan that reduces recidivism rates and general offense. And the negative espouses allowing sex offenders to continue on posing risks to society. They're satisfied with the 15,000 cases that happen every year. And this rate is still growing, as the first affirmative has said. So this is a little bit of dangerous thinking. If you have a tiny little tumor in your body, do you just ignore it? If you let this tumor grow, will it be too late for you to address this problem with your remedy? These 15,000 cases, this 2.7% seems really small for now, but it's 2.7% of 15,000, and it's still growing too. So the negative doesn't seem to be proposing any sort of action to address this marginal rate that they've been saying, and the affirmative does put in the effort to show a disincentive for the sex offenders not to commit again, or not to commit in the first place, because as the negative themselves have said, there's a lot of societal shame about these type of issues, and the sex offenders naturally would be this would be disincentivized for them. So the affirmative has clearly shown a very desirable course of action, while the negative has shown that they would just let it continue and let this tumor grow. So please do vote for the affirmative. Thank you.
That's the end of this debate. In 5 minutes, we'll have the judge give us comments about these performances. Now please wait